Welcome to the channel about news from around the world. While you subscribe and like it, we're going to start.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi makes his first state visit to the US. The official part of the trip begins in New York. The Prime Minister will lead a celebration of International Yoga Day at the UN headquarters, meet a number of prominent personalities and leaders, and then travel to Washington for talks with United States President Joe Biden. The Indian politician is also scheduled to address a meeting of the US Congress. Figuring out what to expect from this meeting. Once upon a time, the US denied the politician a visa to enter the country, incidentally barring him from visiting the United States for 10 years. Back then, the state's chief minister was accused of failing to protect Indian Muslims. The ban ended 9 years ago. During this time, despite the old grievances, Washington has tried to engage more and more closely with the world's most populous country. And now Narendra Modi is being received as America's dearest guest. Earlier, the Prime Minister had visited the United States 6 times for both bilateral meetings and multilateral events. However, it is the official state visit that is the first. The trip is expected to serve to further develop defense, trade and technology ties, as well as to celebrate the warm bonds of family and friendship that bind the two countries. As CNN notes, Modi's visit could be a test for the Biden administration, which has positioned itself as the chief advocate of democracy. India's ruling party has recently come under scrutiny from human rights groups and opposition lawmakers, who say the party has adopted increasingly strident Hindu nationalist policies and suppressed dissent. Last week, Human Rights Watch even called on the White House to put human rights issues at the center of US-India summit. Because of all this, there is growing pressure on Biden to somehow address these issues during Modi's visit. In fact, human rights groups are hoping that the White House chief will put some kind of pressure on his most important regional partner. Western analysts, on the other hand, believe that such a scenario is unlikely, given India's growing influence in the Indo-Pacific region. Another important point is that the Indian diaspora in the United States is considered one of the largest in the country, with 5 million people. It is clear that this group is the most important and fastest growing voting bloc. Clearly, it is more than dangerous to neglect such potential support in the run-up to the 2024 presidential election. If one analyzes what the foreign media and the contracting parties themselves expect from the US-India contacts, several points can be highlighted. Washington and New Delhi are predicted to announce a number of trade and defense deals. According to Reuters, the United States is seeking a major contract from India to supply it with its maritime reconnaissance drones. The Washington administration expects Modi's visit to the US to make progress in negotiating the deal or reach a signing. Shared concerns over China are also a priority in the talks. It is no secret that relations between New Delhi and Beijing are not at all straightforward. One may also recall the occasional confrontation along the Himalayan border, as well as India's membership in the strategic alliance Quad, which also includes Australia, the US and Japan. The alliance itself ceased to exist for a while, but was reinstated under Donald Trump's administration in 2017. If one removes the husk from the stated aim of the alliance, in practice the Quadrilateral Alliance works to contain China in the Indo-Pacific region. Among other things, the collective West, led by the United States, strongly dislikes India's continued strengthening of economic ties with Russia, increased purchases of Russian oil, coal and fertilizers. The New Delhi representative has also repeatedly abstained from voting at the UN when anti-Russian resolutions were brought into the arena. All in all, the conversation for the United States is important and necessary, but also very dangerous. Here, as they say, Washington has to manage to get between Scylla and Charybdis so as not to damage relations with New Delhi and to defend its own aspirations. India's External Affairs Minister Vinay Quatra on Monday described New Delhi's defense relationship with Washington as robust and dynamic. Speaking to reporters, he said the defense roadmap that India and the US are discussing focuses on all aspects of defense, production and development of key components, and could be a key aspect of Modi's trip. Meanwhile, the Biden government is seeking to encourage manufacturers to reduce their dependence on China and turn towards India, which is home to 1.4 billion people, many of them young, promising and English-speaking. Excellent data for a strategic partnership. In principle, the United States sees India as a promising partner, primarily economic, which ideally should replace China in product chains. The United States is now engaged in a so-called decoupling campaign to divorce the Chinese and American economies and is interested in American companies returning to the United States to produce there and create jobs there as well. Obviously, American companies will not go back there because manufacturing in the US is expensive and not profitable. This is why they will look for a new site to locate there and create new products. India looks quite promising in this regard. Plus, the U.S. is interested in India as a partner that will play the role of a kind of bastion against China. In case the PRC always has a hostile state on its southern border, China will have no time to pursue its expansion, either globally or in the Pacific, which the United States fears so much. This is a meeting between the leaders of two major powers, which indicates that each side will pursue its own interests. The experts do not foresee any surprises in the form of a possible change of India's policy towards, for example, Russia. If the Indians consider some arrangement beneficial for them, they will support the Americans. If they find it disadvantageous, they will not support the Americans. In any case, India follows the concept of strategic autonomy, proceeding from the fact that it is beneficial for the country to have a multipolar world and to preserve partnership with Russia in economic, military and political spheres.
Thank you for watching. If you're interested, subscribe and leave a comment.